I still remember the sound of their laughter as the truck pulled away. The tires kicked up dust, the sun was hot on my back, and my heart dropped straight into my stomach. "Kyle!" I yelled, running after them, my hands waving like a fool. "Kyle!" But they just laughed harder. His brothers, Brad and Chase, had their heads sticking out the windows, filming the whole thing like it was some kind of joke. I could hear Chase shouting, "Good luck, Lena! See you in 300 miles," as they drove off. That gas station sat in the middle of nowhere. One pump, a dirty bathroom, and a vending machine with old chips. Nothing else. My phone had just died. No charger, no wallet. I'd left it in the truck when I ran in to grab Kyle an energy drink. He had asked for it sweetly, told me he was too tired to walk inside, so I'd gone in. And when I came out, they were gone. I waited. First 5 minutes, then 20, then an hour. I kept looking down the road, expecting to see the truck come back around the bend. I thought it was just a dumb joke. Kyle had done stupid things before, but never like this. Never something so cruel. I sat on the curb in the sun. My hands were shaking, my mouth dry. Every few minutes I stood and walked around pretending I wasn't scared, pretending it wasn't happening. Then my phone buzzed just before the battery finally died. A single message. "Don't be mad, babe. Just a prank. We'll come back in a bit." I stared at it. I didn't laugh. I felt hollow. This wasn't funny. This wasn't a joke. This was the man I married, the man I cooked for, cared for, defended, and he thought leaving me stranded hundreds of miles from home was funny with his brothers. That was the moment it clicked. Not suddenly, but in a slow, creeping way. Like when you realize you've been sick for a long time and just got used to it. I looked around the parking lot. One trucker filling up, a dirty road stretching both ways, no police station, no hotel, just a convenience store clerk who shrugged and said, "They'll be back, I guess." But I knew they wouldn't. Not anytime soon. And I didn't want them to. I'd spent 5 years trying to keep that family happy. Every dinner with Kyle's parents, every birthday party for Brad's kids, every sarcastic comment I let slide because that's just how they are. This time, I wasn't going to wait. A woman pulled in with a minivan, 2 kids in the back. I asked her if she was headed north. She looked at me, sweaty, scared, with nothing but a half-warm bottle of water, and nodded. "I can take you as far as I'm going," she said. "You okay?" I told her I would be. We drove for hours. I didn't talk much. I just stared out the window, thinking. I didn't cry, not once. I think I had cried too much already over the years. She dropped me at a bus station in a small town I'd never heard of. I thanked her. I used the last bit of battery on my phone to check the bus schedules and message someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Aunt May. All I wrote was, "Can I come stay with you for a while? I don't know where else to go." A few minutes later, a reply. "Always. Come home." That night, I bought a one-way ticket. As the bus rumbled down the highway, I looked back at the town fading behind us and realized something. I wasn't going back. Not to Kyle, not to their laughter, not to a life where my pain was entertainment. And for the first time in a long time, I breathed. Looking back now, I think I always knew something wasn't right. Even when things were good, there was this small ache in my chest I could never shake. I used to tell myself that all marriages had problems, that Kyle loved me, just not in the way I wanted him to. But the truth is, Kyle didn't love me, not really. He loved how I made him feel. He loved having someone to show off when things were going well and someone to blame when they weren't. And his brothers, they made everything worse. Brad and Chase were older, louder, and always had some ridiculous idea brewing. Kyle looked up to them like they were gods. Every weekend it was something. Water balloons in the shower, fake eviction notices, even once hiding my car keys before a job interview, just to see what I'd do. That one nearly cost me the job. But Kyle laughed, said I needed to lighten up. They called it pranking. I called it cruelty. I didn't say much back then. I thought maybe I was the problem. Maybe I was too sensitive. I tried to laugh along. I tried to be the cool wife, the one who rolled her eyes and said, "Boys will be boys." But it hurt every single time. After 3 years of marriage, I started setting money aside. Not because I planned to leave, not yet, but because something deep inside me whispered, one day you might have to. I'd squirrel away $10 here, $20 there. I opened a small account under my name, using my mother's maiden name, and never told anyone. Kyle never noticed. He wasn't interested in the details of our finances. That was my thing. That day at the gas station, when I realized he'd actually left me there, when I watched their truck disappear around the corner and didn't hear it come back, I knew that moment had been building for years. It wasn't just about the prank. It was about all the times I swallowed my hurt and smiled anyway. So I used that money. The woman with the minivan dropped me off 2 towns over. She gave me some snacks, a phone charger, and a $10 bill, just in case, she said. I'll never forget her kindness. Her name was Marcy. At the station, I bought a cheap flip phone and used it to reach Aunt May. I hadn't spoken to her in years. After my mom passed, we lost touch, but she picked up on the second ring like she'd been waiting. She didn't ask many questions, just gave me her address and told me to come. I used the rest of the money for a one-way bus ticket. I didn't know exactly what I'd do when I got there, just that I needed to go. I needed somewhere quiet, somewhere safe. The bus ride took all night. I stared out the window, watching the streetlights blur into streaks. I thought about calling Kyle, not to beg, just to say something final. But then I imagined his brothers laughing in the background. I imagined them calling me dramatic. So I didn't call. And he didn't either. Not that night, not the next day, not ever. When I stepped off the bus the next morning, the air smelled like salt water and pine trees. Aunt May was waiting in an old blue pickup. She looked older than I remembered, but her hug felt the same. She didn't ask me what happened. She just said, "Let's get you inside." For the first time in years, I felt like someone was on my side, like I didn't have to prove anything. I didn't have to explain why I was tired or hurt or scared. I just had to be. I took a long shower that night, scrubbing off the dust, the tears, the years of pretending. And I promised myself something as I wrapped up in a towel and looked at my reflection in Aunt May's mirror. You're not going back, Lena. Not ever again. Aunt May's home sat on a quiet street with chipped picket fences and flower beds that looked like they belonged in an old movie. Her house smelled like lemon polish and fresh bread. Every corner felt warm, lived in, safe. I slept for 2 days straight after I arrived. I didn't even realize how tired I'd been, not just from the trip, but from the years before it. The constant tension, the faked smiles, the never-ending effort to keep peace. My body had finally stopped bracing for the next blow. When I woke up, Aunt May was sitting at the kitchen table knitting like no time had passed. She slid a plate of eggs and toast in front of me, then handed me an envelope. Inside was a small pile of cash and a folded piece of paper with a name written on it. Lena Morgan. My friend at the diner can use help, she said softly. They don't ask a lot of questions, just tell them that's your name. I stared at the paper. My heart beat a little faster. Morgan was my mother's maiden name. I hadn't heard it in years, but it fit. It felt like putting on a coat that had been hanging in the back of a closet. Familiar, warm, mine. I started working at the diner that week. It was a small place near the water with sticky menus and faded booths. But the customers were kind, and the owner, Mrs. Carter, paid me cash at the end of each shift. I worked mornings mostly, poured coffee, took orders, wiped tables. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave me purpose, and it gave me time to think. At night, I'd sit on the back porch with Aunt May, sipping sweet tea and watching the sun dip into the ocean. She never pushed me to talk, just sat with me, quietly knitting or humming old tunes from the radio.
Sometimes I thought about Kyle, not with longing, more like confusion. How had I let myself stay so long in something that chipped away at me, piece by piece? I hadn't just lost myself in that marriage. I had handed myself over. But here, I was getting bits of me back. A few weeks into my new job, everything changed again. It was a slow Tuesday afternoon. The diner was quiet. I was refilling the napkin holders when I heard the bell above the door jingle. A man stumbled in, tall, rough around the edges, soaked in blood. At first, I thought it was a prank. My whole body tensed. But then I saw his eyes, wild, pained, real. "Help," he said, before collapsing near the counter. Time froze. Then my instincts kicked in. I rushed over, checked his pulse, grabbed a towel, and pressed it against the bleeding on his side. Mrs. Carter called 911 while I stayed with him, whispering, "You're going to be okay. Just hold on." The ambulance came fast. They worked on him right there on the diner floor. Before they wheeled him out, he grabbed my wrist and looked straight into my eyes. "Thank you," he said, his voice raspy. His name was Grant. That's all I knew. I didn't think I'd see him again, but a few days later, he came back, limping, bruised, but standing. He asked for coffee. Then he asked for my name. "Lena," I said cautiously. He smiled. "Thank you for saving my life, Lena." He came in every few days after that, always sat at the same booth near the window. Sometimes he'd read the newspaper. Sometimes he'd just sit and stare out at the ocean. He didn't talk much at first, but when he did, he was different from the men I'd known. He didn't interrupt. He didn't joke at my expense. He didn't need to be the center of attention. He listened. It felt strange, new. I didn't know who he really was or what had happened to him, but one thing was clear: he was running from something too. Maybe that's why I didn't feel so alone anymore. By the time autumn rolled in, Grant had become a regular part of my world. He never said much about his past, and I never asked. It felt like we had an unspoken agreement. I wouldn't ask where he came from, and he wouldn't ask who I used to be. We just existed in the now. Quiet mornings, coffee refills, soft glances that lingered just a little too long. Still, there were moments I caught him staring out the window with a look that made my chest tighten, like he was remembering something painful, like he was preparing for it to come back. One evening, a storm rolled in. Thick gray clouds, sheets of rain. The diner closed early, and I walked home with my coat pulled tight. When I reached Aunt May's porch, I saw a figure sitting on the steps. It was Grant. He was drenched. His hair clung to his forehead. His hands were buried in his jacket. When he looked up at me, I saw something raw in his eyes. "I didn't know where else to go," he said. I nodded and opened the door. Aunt May wasn't home. She'd gone to her church group, wouldn't be back until morning. "Come inside." He hesitated for a second, then followed. I gave him a towel and made some tea. We sat at the kitchen table while the storm rattled the windows. For a while, we just listened to the rain. Then he spoke. "I used to be a detective. Big city, narcotics division. Got too close to something I wasn't supposed to. My partner was on the payroll, dirty. set me up, got me shot, left me for dead. I stared at him, not sure what to say. They covered it up, he continued. Said it was a drug deal gone wrong. I knew better. I survived, but I lost everything. My badge, my apartment, my name. He looked up at me like he was waiting to see if I'd run. I didn't. Instead, I said, "Sounds like you needed to get away." He nodded. Yeah, just wanted somewhere quiet, somewhere no one would find me. We didn't talk after that. We just sat there drinking tea while the storm howled outside. That night, he slept on the couch. I brought him a blanket and pillow. When I turned to leave, he gently touched my hand.
Thank you, Lena, for everything. I went to bed with my heart beating too fast. The next few weeks, Grant kept coming by, not just to the diner, but to the house. He'd help Aunt May fix the porch railing, carry groceries, sweep fallen leaves. He never made it feel like a favor. He just showed up. Every time I turned around, he was there. Quiet, steady, present. And then things started to shift. One afternoon, I came home to find the front door wide open. My chest tightened. Aunt May was out. I stepped inside slowly. The living room looked untouched, but in the kitchen, one of the drawers was open, the one where Aunt May kept her spare cash. Nothing else seemed missing, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been there. I called Grant. He was there in minutes. He checked the locks, walked the property, asked if anyone had seen anything suspicious. I could tell something about it rattled him more than it rattled me. "This isn't random," he muttered. "Someone's watching." "Me?" I asked. He didn't answer. After that, Grant started staying closer. He put new locks on the doors, installed a small camera over the porch. He even brought a flashlight and kept it by the side table near the door. He was always calm, but I could tell his mind was racing. At night, I started sleeping with the light on. Aunt May didn't say much, but one evening while folding laundry, she looked at me and said, "Sometimes the people we run from don't chase us because they want us back. They chase us because they lost control." I didn't respond, but I felt her words settle into my bones. Somewhere far away, Kyle still existed. His brothers, too. They were out there living their lives, probably laughing about the day they left me behind. But something had shifted. I wasn't scared of them anymore. I was scared of what they'd do if they realized I wasn't scared. It had been nearly 5 years since I heard his voice, but the moment I opened that door and saw Kyle standing there, it was like time folded in on itself. My hands went numb, my breath caught in my throat. For a second, I thought I was imagining things. He looked older, leaner. His hair was longer, a little messy. There were dark circles under his eyes, and he held his hands up slowly, like he didn't want to scare me. "Lena?" he said softly. "Please, can we talk?" I didn't answer. I didn't move. How did he find me? My mind raced, trying to figure it out. I hadn't used my real name. I didn't post anything. I had been careful. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Grant. He came up beside me and stood between Kyle and me in one smooth, quiet motion. "Who are you?" Grant asked, firm but calm. Kyle blinked at him, clearly caught off guard. "I'm her husband." Those words hit me like a slap. Husband. As if that still meant something. As if 5 years of silence didn't happen. As if he'd left me in the middle of nowhere for a laugh. I stepped out from behind Grant, my voice steady. "I'm not your wife." Kyle's eyes darted between us. "Lena, please, just give me 5 minutes." I looked at Grant. He didn't say anything, just gave me a slight nod. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me, leaving Grant inside. We stood on the porch. The wind carried the smell of sea salt and rain-soaked leaves. Kyle shoved his hands in his jacket pockets
and stared at the ground for a long time before speaking. "I've been looking for you," he said, "ever since the video." "What video?" I asked, my voice flat. He glanced up, almost embarrassed. "Brad and Chase, they started a podcast last year, just messing around, telling stories. One day, they talked about what they did to you at the gas station. They thought it was hilarious." I stared at him, expressionless. "It went viral," he said. "People were outraged." I didn't even know they were going to share that story. When I saw the clip, something in me snapped. "Did it?" I asked quietly. He looked down. "I left them, got out of the business. I've been trying to fix my life. I've been trying to find you for over a year."
Why now? He took a deep breath. Because I couldn't carry it anymore. What I did, what they did, it haunts me. I wanted to believe he meant it. I really did. But his regret came 5 years too late. "You thought it was funny," I said. "You all laughed." "I know," he whispered. "I was stupid. I didn't see what I was doing to you until it was too late. You didn't come back." He looked at me, pain written across his face. "I thought you were just angry. I thought you'd cool off and come home." I was angry, but I wasn't waiting. I left. I saved myself because none of you were ever going to. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. "I just needed you to hear me out." I heard the front door open behind us. Grant stepped out onto the porch and came to my side, calm, steady, protective. Kyle looked at him, puzzled. Who is he? I didn't hesitate. "My fiancé." Kyle's jaw clenched. Grant didn't say a word, but his presence said everything. I turned back to Kyle. "You didn't just lose me because of one prank. You lost me because you never saw me. Not really." Kyle opened his mouth, then closed it. His shoulders dropped like the weight finally sank in. He nodded slowly.
"I guess I deserved that." "You did," I said softly. He turned to go, taking a few steps down the path before stopping. "For what it's worth," he said without looking back, "I'm glad you're okay." Then he walked into the gray mist and disappeared down the street. I stood there in silence. Grant gently placed his hand on my back. "You all right?" I nodded. I didn't feel broken. I didn't feel shaken. I just felt free. The day after Kyle showed up, I sat on the back porch with a cup of tea in my hands and too many thoughts in my head. He was really here. After 5 years, he'd tracked me down and stood on the very porch where I'd rebuilt my life. And now I had to face what I'd worked so hard to avoid, the final goodbye I never said out loud. He came back later that afternoon, slower this time. No demands, no pleading, just a quiet knock and eyes that looked like they hadn't slept. I opened the door. He stayed on the porch. "I'm not here to argue. I just want to talk. Please?" Grant was inside fixing the hinges on the guest room door. He heard Kyle but didn't come out. He knew I could handle it. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. Kyle took a deep breath. "I know there's no fixing this. I'm not expecting a second chance. I just want to understand what happened after I left you there." So I told him. Not everything. Not the new name, not the fear, not the nights I cried into Aunt May's sweater, but I told him the parts that mattered. How I waited for hours in the sun, how I realized I didn't want to be found anymore, how I used the money I'd been saving, the money he didn't even know existed, to buy a bus ticket and vanish. "How long were you planning to leave?" he asked. I didn't plan it, but when it happened, I knew it was the door I'd been waiting for. I just didn't know it until you slammed it shut behind you. He looked like he wanted to cry. I thought you were just being dramatic. I didn't know. No, that's the thing. You never knew. I tried to tell you how your brothers made me feel. I tried to tell you how exhausted I was, but every time you told me to chill out or take a joke, and when I couldn't laugh, I became the problem. He didn't argue, just nodded slowly. What happened to Aunt May? She passed away last year, I said, eyes steady. He flinched. I'm sorry. She gave me a place to land. She didn't need an explanation. She just opened her door. There was a long pause. I saw the way that man looked at you. He's not just your fiancé. He's something else. He's the one who showed up when you didn't. Kyle closed his eyes. I deserve that. You do. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded photo. It was a picture of us taken during our honeymoon. I barely recognized the woman in it. She looked hopeful. Tired, but hopeful. He held it out. I didn't take it.
I'm not that girl anymore, I said softly. And you're not that man. We've both changed, but only one of us learned from it. Kyle's voice cracked. I'll regret it for the rest of my life. You should, I replied. Just then, the door creaked open. Grant stepped out, wiping his hands on a rag, not looking for drama, just standing beside me like he always did. Kyle glanced at him, then back at me. He's lucky. I am too, I said. He gave me a final nod. No more words, no more begging. Just a quiet turn as he walked back down the path, shoulders low, hands in his pockets, and that was it. He didn't come back the next day or the next. Something told me he wouldn't again. That night, I sat with Grant on the porch. He handed me a warm mug, then gently squeezed my hand. You okay? I nodded. I needed to say it out loud, to look him in the eye and let him know he didn't win. He didn't. I leaned into his shoulder. You know the worst part? What? He still doesn't understand that it wasn't the prank that broke us. It was everything that came before and the silence that followed. Grant kissed the top of my head. Then he never really knew you. No, I whispered. But you do. And for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of being found because I had already found myself. 5 years ago, I stood at a gas station with dust in my shoes, no money in my pocket, and no one looking for me. Now, I stood in a courthouse hallway, wearing a navy blue blazer and holding Grant's hand. Reporters whispered at the end of the corridor, their cameras already snapping photos from a distance. I'd been dreading this moment, but now that it was here, I felt something unexpected. Peace. Inside the courtroom, Brad and Chase sat at the defense table in matching suits that couldn't cover their nervous energy. They looked smaller somehow. Not physically, just pathetic. The swagger was gone, no smug smiles, no recording devices in hand. Their latest prank had gone too far. They had humiliated a young woman in front of her entire workplace, rigging her office with hidden cameras, shaving cream bombs, and fake eviction notices, all for clicks. But this time it wasn't funny. She had a seizure from the panic and nearly died. That was the end of their fame. The internet turned on them, and the lawsuit brought them here, and they dragged Kyle in with them. He sat behind them, quiet, staring down at his hands. He looked like a man unraveling, caught between shame and helplessness.
When I walked in, his eyes met mine. For a moment, he looked like he might get up, but then he saw Grant beside me, calm, solid, and fully mine. Kyle didn't move after that. I took the witness stand that day, not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted truth. The lawyer asked me to explain the gas station prank, the one that had made Brad and Chase go viral before their downfall. I told the court what happened, the hours I waited, the fear, the silence. But more than that, I explained what people don't see when they watch a video for laughs. They don't see the woman waking up from nightmares weeks later. They don't see the trust unraveling, the sense of safety replaced with suspicion. They don't see the quiet decision to walk away from everything she's ever known because staying would mean slowly dying. The courtroom was silent when I finished. Even the judge looked stunned. Brad shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Chase wouldn't meet my eyes. Kyle. He looked like he wanted to disappear. After the session ended, I walked out into the bright sunlight. A rush of reporters behind me. I ignored them all. Kyle followed me outside. Lena. I turned. He paused. I don't know what I thought would happen. I do, I said calmly. You thought I'd still be waiting. He looked like he wanted to argue, but no words came out. You didn't come back for hours. Not that day, not the next, not ever. You say you regret it, but what you regret isn't what happened to me. It's what you lost.
He flinched. I didn't leave you because of a prank, Kyle. I left you because that prank showed me the truth. I didn't matter to you, not in the way I deserved. He swallowed hard. And him? He glanced toward Grant, who stood near the courthouse steps, patiently watching. Him? I repeated, a small smile forming. He didn't find me when I was whole. He found me when I was broken. And he never once tried to fix me. He just stood beside me while I healed myself. Kyle's eyes watered. Do you still hate me? I don't hate you, I said honestly. I just don't belong to you anymore. And with that, I turned. I walked away from him without looking back. Grant met me halfway, slipping his hand into mine like it had always belonged there. You okay? He asked. I nodded. I said everything I needed to say. We walked through the crowd and down the courthouse steps together. The press shouted questions, but their voices faded behind us. The wind brushed through my hair and the sun felt warm on my face. I didn't need to hide anymore. I didn't need to explain myself or justify the life I had built. Kyle stood at the top of the stairs watching us alone, the same way I had once stood on the side of a road watching him disappear. Only this time, I wasn't the one left behind. I was the one walking forward.